Hello, everybody. Are you getting the withdrawal symptoms? Crikey, the summer's only 2 weekends old, and we're already looking forward to the start of next season. So we thought as a bit of a change this summer that the guys that bring you the Steelers post-game podcast would perhaps get together once every few weeks and just update you with everything that's going on Steelers wise and around the league. And I'm sure by time to time we'll be joined by a few guests. Tonight, though, it's just the three of us. Joining me, of course, is Jonathan Fernley, the man with all the numbers, with all the stats, and the man who gets to speak to everybody first, Pete Spencer from BBC Radio Sheffield, rightly attired in his GB tracksuit. He's come to work tonight, ready to go. So I thought just to chat, really, boys, just to firstly see how things were. Shall we start with what it was like to win a Grand Slam and our feelings in the days that perhaps followed Nottingham? JJ, it was a hell of an experience, wasn't it?
That's what the playoffs always are. They're always a terrifically enjoyable weekend, whether the Steelers are playing or not. For me, the entire highlight of last season was when the team walked in during Nottingham's semi-final and the Steelers crowd went absolutely nuts. The team weren't even playing, but that's my most memorable moment. This season, I'll remember it not for the trophies. I'm going to remember it for what that rink looked like, because there was a little bit of red and a little bit of teal and a little bit of blue, and there was 2,000 orange. And that building has never looked like that before. There was great footage captured of the Ciampini goal that pretty much secured the semi-final. And the camera behind the goal, it pans around, and all you see are 5 blocks of orange jumping up and down. I said pandemonium in orange a few years ago. That John Armstrong goal had nothing on what that Steelers crowd was like. So more than the goals, more than the trophy lift, it's what that crowd was like, how loud they were, and how spectacular they looked that'll stay with me.
And Pete, you were on the ice after the finals and looking up. It's like when you're in the suites looking down, or whether you're on concourse looking at the side. But when you're actually at ice level and you're looking up at just a bank of orange, it's an impressive sight, isn't it?
It must be really impressive to play in that sort of atmosphere, because it's absolutely deafening. When you're down there on the ice, you can't hear anything else but the crowd. It's so loud. And doing the post game down there on the ice as well. I think out of the 3 trophies that I did, where I did that kind of, circuit around the players, that was the loudest it was. And obviously that was the occasion where there was the least amount of Steelers fans, but it was just absolutely deafening. You couldn't hear anything down there. The 2,000 fans that travelled made a fantastic noise, and it was just superb. I mean, playoff weekend is always a fantastic atmosphere, but that was just something else to experience. And when that Kevin Tansey goal, the puck trickles down the ice, that moment where the Steelers fans just go absolutely ballistic with whatever it was, 60, 63, 65 seconds left. It was a magic moment, and that moment will stay with me. Like the double overtime winner for Levi Nelson will stay with me. Special moments in that building, and another really special crescendo to the season, really.
Jonathan, you and I missed very little, but we missed one thing on playoff Sunday. And it was a story I was told today when I was up in Sheffield and I was with Aaron and Tony and Sean. And the man on the screen with us, Pete Spencer, very softly spoken, very nice man. I think we'd agree with that, wouldn't we? If we were describing Pete, I think nice man is words
Yeah,
we
I think I know the story you're about to tell, Dave.
I think Sean Smith says, I saw a different side of Pete Spencer at the playoff finals. I understand, Pete, you had a little bit of trouble getting onto the ice, and the old hairs were on the back of the net were reckled, and you were in full flow. And we missed that. I'd love to see Pete Spencer in full flow.
So to explain, I'm watching the game. I'm doing off-air commentary from Suite 106, and to get down, there are 2 ways to get down from that level. You can either go down the back stairwell, which you go down a series of steps, and you right out into where Jonathan mentioned last season the team appeared, and you appear from behind the curtain, and you straight out onto the rink. So I tried to go down that way as soon as you get to full time, but it's got a security code on the door now. Years ago, it used to just be left ajar, and anyone that was down on that level that needs to make a quick exit down there can just go down there. So I can't get down there. So I'm like all the other punters. As soon as the full time whistle, head for the exit doors, head for the lift. There's no way down into the lift, so I'm going all the way down the stairs, all the way to the bottom level, jump in the lift, because of course you can't get down to the ice level. So I'm down in the concourse. I'm frantically pressing the buzzer, trying to get the lift down to ice level. Even and at this very moment, the celebrations are in full flow down there on the ice. So I'm pressing the button. Come on, elevator, elevator. Finally, get down to ice level. Security pass. Yep, you're through. Fantastic. Round to the end doors, where the Zamboni doors are at the end, where Jonathan Phillips famously comes off the ice all those years and says what he says to you and the rest of the Steelers crew at the end. And the doors are closed, and there's a bank of about 2 or 3 people deep. And what's going on? Normally, these Zamboni doors are flung open, and the team can kind of come and go. Nothing. So excuse me, can I get to the front, please? Get to the front. Zamboni doors. Come on. Can you, excuse me, can you open the doors, please? And then folded arms. No, we're not opening the doors. I'm like, this is the moment that I've got to get out onto the ice to speak to the players. I'm looking at Colton Sauceman and Kevin Tansey, and the shenanigans are going down there on the ice. Look back at the guy. Come on, open the doors. Still no blank faces. No, we've been told, we've had instructions, the doors remain closed. Behind me, about 3 people behind me, is obviously Sean Smith. His dad owns the club. Come on. Even Sean Smith can't get onto the ice at this point. And words were exchanged, and eventually the doors came open. But there was a frantic couple of minutes there where
Sean
I
was
was
massively impressed with you.
trying to get onto the ice. And for whatever reason, this guy had his instructions, and he was doing his job, and I was trying my best to do my job. And my job was to get onto the ice and speak to the players ASAP. And this guy was clearly impeding, or he'd had some kind of whatever instructions he'd had. But my job was to get onto the ice. I said what I said, and we got onto the ice. And Sean followed me onto the ice, and I said, Sean, we got there eventually, and then we could enjoy the celebrations. But just one of those moments, and I came away, and it took me probably about 3 or 4 minutes to compose myself, to get myself together before I then speaking to the players. And actually, at the point, I had my microphone on, and somewhere there is some audio of me saying whatever I said, and the whole exchange is somewhere buried on a flash mic somewhere. And I don't really want to relive it because I'm getting boiled up and rattled up thinking about it now. But yeah, that was not one of my favourite final memories.
Yeah, Sean, today I saw Pete in a completely different way, so I was really impressed. Really impressed.
Hey, we got the job done, mate. We got on the ice, and that's the main thing.
Before we talk about what's gone on off season, one memory, Jonathan, from this Grand Slam year. If you can just take one memory with you, what would that be? The cup, the league, the playoffs, or something that happened in the year?
I'm going to take the 30 seconds following Kevin Tansey's goal. And I've not told anyone this, so this is Steelers podcast exclusive. It's the first Steelers goal that I've watched as a fan. Obviously, I watched lots of goals as a commentator, so I can't really celebrate those in quite the same way. It's the first time I've ever seen a Steelers goal and I've not celebrated it. When that goal went in, as Douse will confirm and all the other people sitting around me, I just cried because I'm so glad that the season was over. Because last season has so much baggage associated with it. Because of what happened in the October, and because of the things that are still going on, there's people we can't talk about, names we can't say. There's so much baggage that I just don't want it to be that season anymore. I'm so excited for next season when we can just go back to normal. I want it to be normal again. And once that goal went in, last season's over. Thank goodness. The season's over. Everything's going to be okay again. As much as I enjoyed watching the team, I didn't want it to be 2023-24 anymore.
Pete?
I guess it's so stressful from a media point of view. You know, making sure you've got the right things with you, that you are thinking maybe about the right thing to say at what point, and you're so focused in work mode. And I think it all really started for me. Um, you know, the lead up to the Challenge Cup final. You know, obviously Radio Sheffield, we were doing our broadcast, and it's the stress of, are the technicals going to work? Are we going to get on air? What's it going to sound like? You know, going through the last minute stuff with Seth and Ron behind the scenes. It's getting everything sorted for those big moments, so that we are there to cover the big moments, that we can bring it to people in the right way and cover the event in the right, in the fashion it deserves, really. You know, for a Grand Slam winning season, you want to be there at the key moments, you want to get the big moments right. And I felt we did that to a large extent this year. So credit to those guys, credit to the guys behind the scenes, and everyone else as well, that help kind of make it work from that point of view as well. So when you get to when you're going through the day to day of the week to week, and the games are kind of ticking by, that's okay. You can kind of compartmentalize that. But as soon as you get to crunch time, as soon as you get one game to go to win the league title, you know, the game against Cardiff, is it going to be tonight? It's not going to be tonight. Okay, so two more games to go now. As soon as you start counting down to moments like that, that's when the stress levels start to heighten. Okay, you get the first one out the way, Challenge Cup, fantastic. Immediately, you know, it's focused towards the next one. The next one's the league title. Okay, you know, one game to go, two games to go for that. Yeah, that one gets across the line. Then immediately you flip into, well, this could be a really, really special season. This could be a Grand Slam winning season. You know, this is something historic we're on the cusp of. And again, you flip back into work mode. Then it's the playoff semi-final, and you think, okay, get through this game. Then it gets to the playoff final, and all the time you're just thinking, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And then there's a moment where you get to, it's happened. This is it. This is that moment. And you think, you know, me personally, I've been covering the Sheffield Steelers for I think this was my 10th season, maybe even my 11th season covering the club. And you think, special moments like this don't come across every season. You know, we've seen the season in 2018. You know, we've had those barren seasons. We've had the COVID years. And you just think, this is a season to enjoy. This is a season to savor. And when you get to this crunch point, this is a moment to take in, drink it in, enjoy it. We might never see another Grand Slam winning season in our lifetime. I hope we do. I hope next season is another Grand Slam winning season. But this might be as good as it gets, this point in my career covering the Sheffield Steelers. So it's about getting those moments right. And it's probably only the drive back from Nottingham where I'm driving back home, and I've maybe got an hour and a half to kind of think, that was a season to remember. And that's probably what I'll take away. That journey back where I'm thinking about the big moments on the ice. I'm thinking about, you know, Brian Diffley scoring against Guildford. I'm thinking about Watling has got a breakaway again against Guildford in the game to win the title, and how he puts it top corner. I'm thinking about the puck trickling down the ice, Kevin Tansey, as it trickles towards the empty net goal. Those big moments in those big games, I think, are what I'll remember. But I'll also remember the quiet moments, you know, the moments in the locker room, the celebrations, you know, the quiet moments before you start the recording, and you're having a little chit chat with the players, and you know, Aaron lets out a big puff of air, and he kind of goes, "Yeah, we're getting close now." You know, it's those little intimate moments as well that I'll remember for the season. The big moments are definitely memorable, but it's some of those other moments coming down the stretch that I think I'll kind of remember as well. But a really, really special season.
Well, I remember the first Grand Slam in '96. Every 40 seconds, I remember the 2001 Grand Slam because I've got a Twitch. And Mike O'Neill, Dennis Vial, thanks very much for that. Darren Brown, I owe you one. So every 40 seconds, I remember that one every time I close my eyes. But something happened a little bit different this Grand Slam because we had the civic reception on the Monday. I'd always go back to the balcony celebrate, see the fans on the top. But then I'd always have work in the morning, drive back to Birmingham. I'd never go out with the boys. And I went out because we stayed over for the civic reception. So I went out, a couple of places Valley had arranged, and great night, early hours, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock finish, brilliant night. But I got to see during that time just how close that group were, all of them. And obviously, Jonathan, you referred to the incident in October, and that will give them a special bond and a special, bond together. But just stood there watching them all, and really, I love people watching, and watching them that night will be a memory I take back, because each and every one of them, no cliques, no little groups, everybody together, girlfriends, wives, players, staff. Dean, myself, and Courtney were there, and they included us like we were part of it. But everybody was all as one group, and I must admit, as that night went on, I thought, what a special group this is. So that I'll certainly take away that. Let's look at what's happened team wise. A couple of departures, a semi-retirement kind of half. I'm not sure Nicholas Neverlinen's going to retire, but certainly going back to Finland, big loss. And Brett Newman, of course, signing in Switzerland. Start with you, Jonathan. Your thoughts on those two individuals, what they've brought us, and how will we replace them?
I think it'll be extremely difficult to replace both of them, particularly Neverlinen, because we rely so much on his consistency in defence. You look at the plus minus numbers aren't flashy. They're not the stats you first look for on Elite Prospect. But he was right up there with the Steelers' best for 2 full seasons. You could put him out there and you know you're going to get an 8 out of 10 performance from him every single night. There aren't going to be flashy point numbers, but he gets more points than you think, more points than Brandon Whistle last season, more points than Brian Diffley. And he just goes about it in such a quiet way. Players like that are difficult to find because they don't stand out. The guys who put up all the points, they stand out. The guys who put in the big hits, they stand out. The guy who's just got his stick in the lane and just gets that crucial deflection, just blocks that shot, you don't remember those after the game's gone. But when you look back at a season and you look back at all the things that aren't major highlights, Neverlinen's there for all of them. It's going to be really difficult to get someone who can do as reliable a job as he's done. And with Newman, I just love the fact that he played the game at 100 miles an hour. Skating out for the pre-match intros, you call his name, Dave, and he flies out. And he always played the game at that speed. And the crowd really enjoyed that. We've always been about under Aaron Fox. We want to be a fast team. And Newman really embodied that. He was young. He was a goal scorer. He's getting better. I don't begrudge him wanting to go and try and see what he can do elsewhere. I'd love to see him back one day.
Pete, your thoughts on those two? Played a huge part in the year.
Yeah, a huge part over 2 years, really. And I think that's one of the reasons why. And when a player departs, I don't always do like a departure interview, but it just kind of felt right with Brett, really. He'd been through so many highs and so many lows with the club. And he'd been, obviously missing out on maybe a fairy tale end last season for Jonathan Phillips. And it was one of those that it kind of felt right to have a chat with Newman. I mean, there were questions about why he'd made the move, and we'd been chatting a little bit about, the opportunity that he gets in that league, the fact that there are only 2 imports per team, and obviously he's going to a team towards the bottom end of that league, but he's got a great opportunity. My understanding is he's got a relationship with the other import that's coming into that team as well. So an opportunity for him to be a big part of that team and to kind of be the guy, whereas this season he's been one of the guys, and we've talked about the camaraderie in the locker room. He's going to be one of the main go-to guys on that team. It's a chance for him to earn more money. It's a chance for him to put himself in a shop window for potentially another move within that league structure. and potentially move up to the top league in Switzerland if he does a good job. So from that point of view, he's putting himself in the shop window. He's 25 years old. As Jonathan says, he's still got time towards the back end of his career if he wants to give Sheffield another go. But, good luck to him. Such a great guy in terms of, he's never got more than he's never got, he's always got time for you. He's always one of the few guys as well that when I look back through the amount of players that I've covered, will always say hi to me in the tunnel, in the locker room. Hi Pete, how you doing? It's the little things like that. Just a really, really nice guy, but a ruthless goal scorer as well when it counts. Wasn't Obviously he had his injuries this season, and maybe they hampered him towards the end of the year. But credit to him, he had two big injuries this season. Both times he came back. You think about that goal that he scored in the first game back. He'd actually come off an injury that game against Coventry as well. Big night, full of emotion, and he rips one for it in that game. And then obviously the way he fought back after that second injury, could have quite easily gone, you know what, I'm done. And then the shoulder pops out again mid playoffs. Really, he put everything on, put his body on the line for the club. Scored some big goals in his time here, and as Jonathan says, just played the game at 100 miles an hour. That line of him, Watling, and Usler at the start of the season. That line won some big games towards the start of the season, and then you put him back with Scott Allen and Daniel Ciampini towards the back end of the season, and that chemistry from the year before just does a job again. So fantastic that Aaron had the option to go back to that line. In terms of Nicholas Nevalainen, I know that obviously he's got pre-existing injuries, before coming into Sheffield, but, plus 38, this season in terms of his plus minus, plus 43 last year. He was by far and away one of the best defensemen in the league both seasons, but, that first season especially, he'll probably be remembered for that overtime winner in Manchester, the 5-4 winner, in a game that probably didn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but you only had to look at how the team came around him after he scored that overtime winner in Manchester, and what that meant to the team, and that was the high bar that the team had this year. That it was a high mentality. It was all about performances on the ice. They could have dialed in that performance really, and not been bothered. The league was already put to bed, but it was about momentum. It was about the team, and it was about playing for each other, and that's definitely what they did, and that's what Nicholas Nevalainen's done throughout his 2 seasons here in Sheffield as well. So you want to win, you bring in a Finn, or you bring in 2.
That's what they say. The people watching this, of course, are all interested in who's coming back, who's coming back, who's coming back. Cole Schuger's on the second year of a ticket. We announced Robert Dowd a little earlier. So the big one was Kevin Tansey. I posted that I don't think we'd signed a more impressive player in a decade or more. I think Tansey, if you compare him to a Steve Munn or a Dean Darlin, in my book, that's giving him the ultimate standing. He was an incredibly impressive individual on and off the ice. And if I dare say, if there was one player, you could only bring one player back from that team, and I love lots of them, as we all do. Tansey was that guy for me. He was a proper bloke. And in this modern world, I don't know if you're allowed to say proper bloke anymore, but he was a proper bloke. And I felt he was something that we'd been lacking for a long time. And I was thrilled he was coming back. An important first signing, Jonathan? Can you think of a more important one?
No, for all the reasons that you've mentioned, Dave. It's always going to be difficult the season after somebody like Jonathan Phillips leaves, because there's the potential for not a leadership vacuum exactly, but there's room for other voices in that room, for other people to say, this is my team now. And whilst Dowd has got the captaincy and will always have that respect, you need more players like Kevin Tansey to come in and set the standards and hold everybody to account. And again, talking about Nevalainen, let's play spot the bad Kevin Tansey game. Well, I'm not aware of any. He just produced all the time. And again, there were games when it wasn't flashy, but then as the season went on and he grew in confidence, you started to see, yeah, actually, I can dangle around this guy and flick it top corner. And I think the more the time goes on, the more we might see an even more expressive Kevin Tansey. because he was just getting more and more comfortable in his role, and with the adoration of the crowd, he thought, yeah, now's the time for me to show off a little bit. So I'm hoping that we'll see his game taken to an even higher level next season, because he knows what the league is all about. He knows what's expected of him, and he knows that he can do it at this standard of hockey. So super excited to have him back. You know, we've got a reliable player every night when he's out on the ice.
He was super reliable, wasn't he, Pete? And a leader on and off the ice.
Yeah, and that's why Aaron, when Robert Down's out of the lineup, when he's injured, when he's away on GB duty, that's why Kevin was given the C. And Aaron had said to me, if I'd known more about his character coming in than just the pre-season signing chat that they'd had and the exchange with the agents, then he definitely would have been in the running to wear a letter. And I think going forward, he's eschewing to be wearing a letter next season, really.
Before you go on, there are some players, though, that don't need a letter to be a leader. And I think Darling was a captain. Munn, I don't think Munn never captained the side, but Munn was our captain for a lot of the time. He, in so many different ways. And I think Tansey is that kind of guy. I don't think he probably would bother him a dot that he didn't have an A or a C on. He was still a leader in the room, and he showed that from beginning to end.
Yeah, and he said it was a huge honour. He says every time I bring up the captaincy with him, I've never played for a better captain than Robert Dowd. And obviously, he's saying all the right things, but, what a job Dowdy did in his first season as well. But Kevin as well, Aaron said, I bet you if you looked at all the games where Kevin wore a C, he must have scored a goal, he must have got an assist, he must have got a huge hit. He just kind of raised him another level, if there's another level to go at with Kevin Tansey. And he was phenomenal in so many games this season. I can't think of a game where he'd had a bad game or he'd made, a play where you had your head in your hands. 13 goals, 24 assists, 69 games. He only missed one game all season.
I can't remember that game. I saw that. Which game did he miss, Jojo?
Oh, I'd have to go hunting for that one. I don't have it to hand, but I'm starting to think
when I was looking through,
so I started to think it was probably a game where he was just rotated out of the lineup at the end of the season. I think had all the games at the end of the year had meaning, I think he probably would have played the lot.
But it was one of those where he definitely missed a game, because I was going back through and I was like, the 31-year-old had played every game this season. I thought I better just check that stat, and sure enough, he had missed either one or two games or whatever it was. But like you said, it wasn't for a significant injury. And credit to the way that the physio staff had patched him up as well. He said that Alfie was holding him together with duct tape by the end of the season, and he's a proper throwback as a player, isn't he? You think about your Zach Fitzgeralds, that Kevin Tansey definitely falls into that bracket, not because he can drop the gloves, not because he can throw it about, not because he makes big hits, but because he gets what it means to be a Steeler. He's got that in his DNA, and I think that's, you talk about the legacy after Jonathan Phillips has left the club. Kevin Tansey on a 2-year deal, that's your continuation of the Steelers' DNA. He just gets what it is to be at this club.
Did you see the, I think it was an Instagram post, he's on holiday a few days afterwards, and he's obviously had a couple of sherbets, and he's with a friend of his, and he goes, we won them all. Not one, not two, three. We won all the cups. There was no more cups for us to win. And he was just that excited and that. And I think he let himself out to the fans, didn't he? Him and Sauce, they're two big mates. Where the third member of that trio, Ciampini's perhaps a little bit more reserved, isn't he? And Sauce and Tans were certainly, they let themselves go, the Beards, the whatever, but they let themselves go. Jonathan, just a quick one. Pete quickly brought up Robert Dowd. Just stay there. Don't move. Dave, keep this running. Hold on. Don't go anywhere, callers. I'm going to start off by saying, chairman of the Robert Dowd fan club, I mean, I openly admit I love the bloke. Nothing I wouldn't do for him. But I'll ask you a question. Did Robert Dowd surprise you at how good a captain he was? Because I'll start off by saying he surprised me a little bit. I was chuffed when he got it. Love the lad. and he bleeds Sheffield. He's a top lad for that, and it means such a lot to him. But I've got to be honest, I was so proud of him and so impressed with how he dealt things. And hey, he dealt with the biggest thing of all, post October. Um, but we all knew Dowdy beforehand. Were you surprised just what a good captain he turned out to be, JJ?
I can't really judge that because I watch from the back of the arena. I'm not in the dressing room. I can't hear what he says. I'm not at practice every day. I'm not there on the group chats when he's picking a player up and giving him a pat on the back or giving him a dressing down if they need it. I'm not there to see those things, so I can't judge it. I can only judge what I see from his performance. It did not affect his performance in the slightest. You're thinking, oh, is he going to have his mind on other things and he's taking his mind off his goal scoring and his points production? Absolutely not. Dowd was as deadly as ever this season. And I look at that, the leadership that he showed at the finals weekend. Man, he couldn't shoot. His wrist was absolutely gone. There were times when he was in possession, he thinks, Dowd would snap it home from here. If this was a month ago, Dowd's going to score. But his wrist hurts so much, I can't pass it. I can't shoot, I've got to pass it.
I was,
But he still
I
kept
was in
putting
the physio
himself out
room.
there, and he still kept putting in the hits. He couldn't even shake hands after the semi-final. His right wrist was hurting that much. But team needed him, so I'm going to be there and I'm going to do my bit. So from what I could see, fantastic. But I'm sure the players can tell you even an awful lot more.
Yeah, Pete, I was in the dressing room on both the Saturday and the Sunday when the doc was injecting him, and everybody in the room was going like that. And Dowdy, in all fairness to Dowdy was giving it one of them as well, rightly so. Bloody great needle. Um, I think that does just signify just how much it meant to him to play, to be a part, to not miss out. But he wanted to be in the heat of the battle, and he never missed a shift, did he? He was like he was outstanding that playoff weekend as he was all year. The captaincy didn't weigh on his shoulders.
No, not at all. And you talk about how he raised his game. 28 goals this season. That's right up there with some of Robert Dowd's best seasons as a Steeler. He's been absolutely superb, hasn't missed a beat. I mean, just look at, he's away with GB at the moment. Aaron was talking about the fact that for 2 weeks, he didn't train. He didn't train. He didn't go on the ice. He did nothing. And all the fans in the lead up to the playoff weekend were looking for photos. Oh, Dowdy's, when they get the awards the day before, the players are all there at training. Dowdy gets, Brit of the Year, and then the special Jonathan Phillips new award this year. It takes both of those off Aaron Fox. Oh, he's not training, but to play through what he did just should you can't put into words. If you've seen the injury, and obviously you've seen it, bandages off and him getting the injection. If you've seen what he's gone through this year, mentally, physically, he's led from the front, but he's had the best apprenticeship in the world, being the man behind Jonathan Phillips. If you're looking for a blueprint for what it means to be a captain, for how to act, to how to conduct yourself. He's had the best apprenticeship ever. But I mean, nothing could have prepared him for this season. And just the way that he carried the team, the way that he represented himself and the club has been nothing short of superb. Such a, there was no other choice at the start of the season, and there's no other choice at the end of the season. What a job that he has done this year. And speaking to him on the ice at the end, I asked him the question, back in September, if I told you, did you think you were going to win them all? And he said, you just want to be in the hunt. He said, if
Yeah.
you're just in and around it, that's kind of what you want, and then the rest takes care of itself. But it was such a special group. They had such a special bond this year, and led by such a special captain as well.
Yeah, I was stood by the bench in Belfast when the collision happened, and he came straight off, and then Alfie took him straight down to the room. Doctor goes into the room. I wander in because I'm just sheer nosy and I want to know what's going on. And the doctor's got his hand and he's prodding his hand. Does it hurt? And Daddy's going, no, actually, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And then all of a sudden, the guy puts his hand on a part that did hurt. and Daddy, poor sod, was up in the air. It was a nasty one, a nasty one. Okay, end of Sheffield for a little bit. Let's just finish off. Time's running against us a little bit. There's been some movements in and around the league. Our good mate Corey Nelson. Um, got his fifth job in 2 years, um, and goes to Glasgow. Danny Stewart makes a move from Coventry to them down the road, and of course a couple of signings this weekend with Conway and Pickenich going back to Belfast. I'm guessing Belfast were a little unhappy we stole their Grand Slam, and they've decided to come back and show their cards. Briefly, which is something all three of us struggle with that word. Um, Nielsen, Stewart, Conway, Pickenich can throw Ben O'Connor to Dundee in there as well. To talk about what you see is happening already in the summer. I'll start with you, Jonathan.
I think it's really exciting for the league that Dundee can sign Ben O'Connor. I think that's a real statement from them that they're not just a team that's going to be scrapping around for 10th, ninth, 8th. They have ambitions to push forward. What's always been the issue that's held back the teams at the bottom? It's been having those quality Brits. The teams at the top of the league have them, the teams at the bottom don't. That's a sign from Dundee that we are prepared to, push the boat out a little bit and make that marquee signing. Dundee have always been able to pick up quality forwards. Now you've got a quality GB defenseman. Ingles has shown his quality. McBean's getting better season by season. They're trusting Garrigan more and more. A Dundee team that's playing with depth, that's something to really look forward to. As for the coaching merry-go-round in Nottingham and Coventry, I think if you'd offered Panthers fans the choice of Moore or Stewart, a lot would have gone for Kevin Moore. But once Danny Stewart was announced, it seemed like the Panthers fans were sort of talking themselves into him. Thinking, actually, I suppose he'll be fine. Yeah, he's signed some good players before. He knows the league. And then when Kevin Moore went to Coventry, they went, I didn't realise we could have had him. And it was just a little bit of a downer. But Coventry needed to hit the reset button. They absolutely did. It's got so stale there. They needed something new. Nottingham, hopefully now, have got a foundation that they can build on and maybe have a little bit of coaching consistency. They've not had that since Nielsen. And again, Glasgow just need to do things differently, and Corey should do that for them. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited about what next season is going to bring around the rest of the league, because I think there's real intrigue for all those teams.
Any coaching change surprise you, Pete? More to Coventry, Stewie to Nottingham, and yeah, Corey to Glasgow. By the way, as well, JJ, Nottingham needed experience. They needed a man not for the emotion of what he went through. I mean, the Danny Stewart. I mean, Kevin Moore's probably the perfect guy to go into Coventry, but Danny Stewart, they needed that experience at the helm. Surely, Pete, at Nottingham, they couldn't take a first year guy at this moment in their tenure, could they?
No, and Nottingham have tried it a couple of seasons. Obviously, they had the Gary Graham experiment, and then obviously this year again they went abroad to a head coach as well. But I think actually what Danny Stewart brings, and it was a surprise for me when the move was made. I know Danny's been very happy in Coventry and very settled, and as JJ said, maybe just needed a new challenge and a bit of a reset for Coventry. But also, you look at the difference in budgets to what Danny's going to have to work with. Coventry versus Nottingham, he's going to be able to push the boat out. The remit isn't just to make the playoffs and make a splash in the playoffs anymore. It's it's to compete for trophies. Nottingham want to get back to winning trophies and securing titles. I know Sheffield fans won't want them to as well. But that's what Danny Stewart's remit's going to be. It's going to be a different challenge for him. He's going to have a different budget to work with. I think Corey Nielsen makes a lot of sense for Glasgow as well. They've been wanting to enter a new chapter with new ownership, and I think he's going to give them that opportunity and that elite league experience as well. I think Mark Lefebvre, as you said, has already made some great moves, and speaking to him at the playoff weekend, I know that he's got a lot of exciting plans for that club as well. So exciting times for Dundee as well, as they look to kick on with a second year with Mark as well. Um,
What about Belfast getting the band back together again? They're going back to the well. We Pickenich and we Conway, two outstanding players. We'll talk about Conway and referees in a second before we go. We'll finish off with that one. But Belfast have set their mark and they've let the league know early as well. They haven't held those signings back, have they? They've come straight out with them.
No, but I think that's what Adam Keefe probably had to do after the disappointing the second season that they've had. Wanting to follow up on the Grand Slam. I think the only way for you and Sheffield know what it's like after you lose a big title game. You want to make a splash. You want to, as you said, get the fans moving in the right direction. You want to boost season tickets for the next season, and Keefe has done exactly that. He's brought out the marquee signings already and said, look, this is what we're going to do. Get excited about the new season. So bringing back Conway, bringing back Pickenich, some big names, and some, as you said, it's an early marker, isn't it? It's laying down an early marker for the league and saying this is what we're going to be about for next season. But I think that's really exciting. If Sheffield can bring back more of their marquee forwards going up against Scott Conway, you've got Kevin Tansey. Can he shut Conway down in the way that Sheffield couldn't when he was playing that season? Obviously winning the league title on home ice as well. So I think that's going to be an interesting contest next season as well. So yeah, I think Adam Keefe's done exactly what he should do and laid down a marker.
Can I throw one at you? The league has a social media policy. Conway completely and utterly obliterated that policy when he left the league. There's a lot of chatter around with fans now, and some of the fans are a bit daft with different things. Does Conway get suspended for the first one game, two games, half a dozen games of the season? Does the league just let it pass what he said on his departure? What do you think should happen there?
I'm not sure he can because he's not an elite league player at the time he makes that comment. So I don't know what authority the league would have to do that. He's not a member of the league, so did he bring it into disrepute? Yeah, but he wasn't a player at the time, as far as I'm aware. His contract was up. He was done. He was off. So I'm not sure the league can do anything. I'm sure they'll have a word, and when all the teams get together for their induction days in August and September, the Elite League will provide an update to the social media policy and just remind people, but I'm really not sure there's anything that they will be able to do. It's a little bit embarrassing for the league, I guess, but the more interesting thing is the first time he puts his stick across somebody's gloves in Scotland. We'll see what the referees think of it.
Your thoughts, Pete?
Yeah, I just echo what JJ says. Really, it'd be interesting to see the first time they're in up in Glasgow or they're in Dundee, and it'd be interesting to see the way the referees, call that. Obviously, I was surprised that he'd made that comment anyway. If he ever had any thought of coming back to the Elite League, it looked like when he made that comment that he was going to be riding off into the sunset. But here he is. He's back at the club and making a splash as well. But we want characters in the league, don't we? And Scott Conway is definitely a divisive character. He plays that way. So I'm all for more characters in the league and more of the best players as well. And it'll be interesting to see it, because Belfast last season, when they didn't have Conway, a lot of the fans were, well, this isn't the same Belfast team that won a Grand Slam. I'd like to see this Sheffield team go up against Conway and Pickenich and etc. etc. Well, now you're going to have that opportunity. You're going to be able to see the best players from Belfast's Grand Slam winning team, because I'm sure they're going to bring more of that Grand Slam winning team back if the marker that they've already laid down is anything to go by. So it'd be interesting to see how the two teams match up going toe to toe.
So yeah, I just think for Belfast, of the teams we've spoken about, it's easiest to say what their minimum expectation is for next season. They've got to win something, and the title, they need to be in the race come the final month of the season. They'd love to win it, but they need to at least be in it. They were out of it way early, way too early for Belfast this season. I think it's much, much harder to say what makes a successful season for Coventry, for Nottingham and for Glasgow. What league position do they have to finish in for them to say, yes, job done. I think it's really hard to pitch, given the seasons that they've had. They were the teams that, struggled for the playoffs all season long, and Coventry made it and the other two didn't. But what number is a success for them? Is it sixth? Is it fifth? Or is it a cup run? Or I really don't know what to expect from those teams. And I also don't know what their fan bases are going to demand from them.
I'd suggest 4 for Nottingham. It's a success if they finish in the top 4, because they should. Club that size. Coventry, I guess they just scraped into the playoffs. So 8, 7, 6 is probably going to be a success for them. Glasgow, of course, they're going to be wanting to be in the top 4. They're going to be paying to be in the top 4. But they're going to come up against Cardiff, Sheffield, Belfast, Nottingham.
Manchester.
And well, yeah, I mean, Manchester certainly overachieved, didn't they, last year, finishing 4th? I mean, it wasn't a false position because the league table never lies, does it, at the end of the year? But I think that was probably the biggest surprise of all, that they did such a terrific job in finishing that position. But I think Nottingham have to be looking at a top 4. I saw Danny's interview and he said, "Oh, if we can finish in the top half." Um, there's not a chance I think Danny Stewart really believed the top half would be a success. I think he knows he's got to be a top 4. Nottingham have got to put behind them a little bit what's gone over the last 12 months and come in with a broom, and they're a top 4 club and they should be a top 4 club. I mean, nobody loves them being 10th more than me, but really, they've got to be a top 4 club, haven't they? You would
But they've played 500 hockey for the last 4 or 5 seasons. They've not been playing like a top 4 club for a while. So a lot needs to change at the Panthers for the top 4 to become a thing that they're regularly in, because that hasn't been the case since well before COVID.
Dave Burnham told me 30 minutes this should last. It's at 46 at the moment. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds each on the CHL. We've got the draw coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Just your thoughts ahead of the CHL. Start with you, Pete.
I like the format this year. I think playing 6 different teams is exciting. I think the opportunity to potentially travel around Europe and Sheffield fans to see lots of different rinks and lots of different teams and lots of different new faces, I think that's going to be exciting. I think it also makes it. I mean, when we played Frölunda and HV, was it HV71 in the same season, or was it Vascular?
Frölunda and Yip in the 1 year, and then Salzburg and HV71 the second year. Yeah.
We're taking that Frölunda and Yip year, for example. I mean, going up against those 2 powerhouses of European hockey, you just thought you've got no chance against these 2 teams. And it's one of those where if you're playing 6 different teams, then you feel like you're going to get something out of some of those games, at least. Obviously, you're going up against the best teams in Europe, so you take nothing for granted. But you just think if you get a team back like you had last year, and you're going up against some of the best teams in Europe, you're going to have some good European nights of hockey. So I think a positive move forward, because you're not just going to get drawn against 2 big boys and have no chance. So I think it's a good shift in format. So I'm excited to see who the Steelers get in the draw.
Jay?
I think a lot of the fans would be hoping that they'll get to go somewhere we've not been for a while. So having drawn Swedish, Finnish and Austrian teams before, let's go to the Czech Republic, let's go to Germany, let's go to Switzerland, let's go somewhere Steelers fans have not been for a while for our away games. Really don't care who we get at home. But with this group situation, to get through, you're going to need to win 2 of your home games, probably that 3rd rank and the 2nd ranked team from those pots at home, and then get something from the away game. So it doesn't really matter who the 1 seeds are. The Steelers are not expecting to beat those. But when the teams come out of pot 3, those are the teams the Steelers need to beat.
Okay. Just coincidentally, Sean Smith is just texting me the details of my flight to Prague for the draw. I'm going with Aaron Fox. Should be good. It's been a few years since we've done that. Anything, boys? We always, when we do the podcast at the arena on match nights, we always say, anything else? Good for you, Jonathan. Go on. What do you want to bring up?
31st of March, Manchester away. Kevin Tansey did not play. We have our answer to the game he missed.
I knew you'd come up with it. Anything, Pete, you want to add? Anything you're looking forward to in the weeks ahead here?
Yeah, we're always looking forward to who the next name out the hat is. I think one team we've not really talked about tonight has been Cardiff. Obviously, for so much of the season they were
Mm.
chasing Sheffield down. Not really made too many moves. I don't think any moves in the off season yet. Bodie Wilde's departed Cardiff, who I thought was one of their outstanding players. So maybe question marks about what the Devils do next, and what Pete Russell does with that roster next to try and narrow the gap with Sheffield.
Let me tell you, Cardiff have made lots of moves. Belfast have made lots of moves. Sheffield have made lots of moves. Most of these clubs have made lots of moves. And it's a bit of cat and mouse when they release. And to kind of do it all over. We took a decision today. We weren't going to release anything for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then we'll release some names. Just that's how we just want to do it. But I think a lot of clubs have got players in the bag and they just don't want to release them. I know several in several clubs at the moment, and that are there about. I mean, Corey Nelson's trying to sign every British guy going at the moment. He's picked up Hazeldine, hasn't he? Good little pickup up there in Glasgow. Was the Brits a big problem for Glasgow? Do you think, or was it more
Net
import
minding,
wise?
net minding, net
I think it's
minding,
not.
net minding, and then the net minding.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say it makes sense for Joe to make that switch to Glasgow, doesn't it? He had a lot of success playing, obviously under Corey Nielsen, and I think he joins his mate up there in Glasgow as well, doesn't he? So it's a good addition for them. Hey, I think Lucas Bryan from Dundee to Glasgow, that's a great signing for Glasgow as well. British backup in Lucas Bryan, and we were talking earlier in a subsequent in previous podcasts what a good job he done for Dundee down the stretch as well when they were short of bodies. So a great move there for Glasgow early doors as well.
Okay. He wants to send me out at 7 o'clock from Manchester. 7 o'clock. That means you got to be there at 5. Leave Birmingham at 3:30. It's a bit early, isn't it?
It's a
Crikey,
free
we're not
holiday
going
to the
Prague
Czech
that
Republic,
early.
Dave. You can't whinge about this.
I'm going for 24 hours, JJ. 24 hours. It's not a holiday. I'll get
Hey,
there, get on the
did you
plane, go into the
just
hotel,
finally,
watch the
did you
show,
see
come
that?
home.
Did you see that video that Marco Valorand put out with the tram going past and it had
All the
all
love.
the gloves?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a great video as well? I loved that. I thought that was
No,
fantastic.
great video. No, good video. All good. Okay, boys. Well, good to see you both. And I hope you at home have found the last 50 minutes a little bit more interesting than our producer Dave Burnham has, because we've been watching the screen and you can see 3 faces. We can see 4 because we can see Dave. And literally for the last half an hour, he's done nothing but yawn. So I hope you found it a little bit more interesting than he has. We'll be back in a few weeks' time. We'll keep you updated on all the news from Steelerland. Enjoy your summer and keep wearing that orange. Thanks very much for watching. To JJ, to Pete, thanks very much for the genius that is Dave Burnham for putting it all together. Thanks again, Dave.